The attackers got a chat GPT like website, especially for things that they want to do.
They saw that attacks were happening in conjunction with physical attacks.
Worm GPT actually don't have that barrier in it. So it will create phishing emails for the attackers.
But for the first time with Ukraine, we really got evidence altogether for the fact that cyber war, the fifth dimension of war, is now a thing.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cloud Architects Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Goosen. I am here once again with Nicholas Blank.
Hi, Chris.
We have been having a lot of fun doing these sort of in-person recordings again. It's been, a couple of years, at least a few years since we last were able to actually get together with people. And it's been a good day. It's been a long day.
It is still a long day because it's nearly 10 o'clock at night and we are recording.
And I think it's testament to the power of community, right? And I think this episode is again a testament to why we love community so much. A lot of folks don't always understand it, but we have a panel essentially joining us. I like to sort of think of them as the Dutch collective, right? But ultimately, we have Koos. Koos is a returning guest for us. He's been on before, and I'm sure you caught the Sentinel episode that we did a little while back, which was fantastic. We have Jeroen joining us as well, and Maarten, and the three Dutch, or the Dutch collective. You guys work for Wortel, is that correct? And we're super happy to have you guys joining us. I'm sure if you follow the Microsoft security space, you've probably seen a lot of the content that these guys do as well. They are, I think, even more geeky than we are when it comes to producing content and giving back to the community, right? You guys even have a drone. I'm super jealous of the fact that you have a drone and you're doing cool stuff like that. But welcome to the show. We're super excited to be talking to you. And our topic, I think, today is it's topical, right? We want to talk a little bit about security, cybersecurity. You guys are very involved in cybersecurity. And I think the other thing that's great about it is perspective. You guys have a unique perspective, a European perspective that you kind of add to, the things that we see as far as the threat landscape goes and things like that. Obviously, we see things from our parts of the world as well. And we're hoping for a really, really exciting episode. If we can, we'll keep the laughter to an acceptable limit as well, if we can.
I thought that was a very adult introduction of you. I think very well done. And I like that our guests are roughly from the middle of the world. We're not going to say Middle Earth because there's other connotations to that one. However, being in the middle of several economic zones buys you a lot of perspective. And you're not American, you're not Asian. You see enough European perspective to have a very good perspective of actually three sides of the world. So I'd actually maybe like to start off by asking the question about perspective in terms of what is your worldview when it comes to security as well as politics, nation-state actors. The world seems to be upset with China when it suits them, Russia when it suits them, every now and again another Western country is the bad guy. But you guys see all of this stuff actually in the logs. So give us your perspective.
I think Holland in general is an interesting country in Europe because we're very small. Like physically, the size of the country is like New York State or some smaller country. We are about 18 million people, but we are the fourth economy of Europe. So we're doing something right, I guess. But we're very export driven. So we produce less, but we export knowledge. We have the biggest chip maker in the world. So knowledge and intellectual property, if you will, is something that's dear to us because it drives a lot of our companies and therefore our economy. So we are very much a country that has democratic values geared towards the West. So we see certain parts of the world differently where we lack democracies. But what has been changing dynamics over the last 2 years is, of course, a war really nearby. And being a digital economy, you then start to see firsthand the effects from cyber and cyber threats and even cyber warfare coming up. Now, being a very knowledge-driven country, I would say that there's a lot of people working in the digital economy, and we do have a lot of people in IT. So we are well suited to start handling those attacks. And I think many of us are working in IT, so there's a good representation of cybersecurity professionals as well. And even from the community, you started about the value of community. I think that's something that shares between the five of us. We have more MVPs per capita, more MVPs per 18 million than many other countries. So that's a weird statistic, but something that drives us. So I think, like you said, we do have a certain perspective, and running a cybersecurity company makes us experience it at firsthand.
It's such an interesting thing that you said the MVP thing, right? I was going to bring that up too, because I feel like I've been spending a lot of time in all of the security sessions this week, and I feel like almost everyone that's there is Dutch, right?
There are actually a lot of Dutch people over there. Yeah, it's almost a Dutch party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but it goes to what you were saying, right? Is if you consider the size of your country, the amount of people.
Yeah, and that's also a benefit, because you could understand that if your border is just a 2-hour drive end to end, like getting a user group together for everybody in the country that wants to participate is actually an option. Like you could ask somebody from almost the other side of the border, like join us in Amsterdam for this really nice community gathering. And so the small geography makes that we're a tight-knit community, and that starts to then bring upon a certain DNA, a certain culture, that people are inspired and joining community, and that snowball effect continues.
You know, and I'll add this too, right? So I've known Koos for a little while, and we actually met at a conference in Amsterdam, or Haarlem, and I think I've 2 or 3 times now I've spoken at conferences in the Netherlands, and they are my favorite, most favorite conferences of all time, because the community and everyone is so super interested. I did a really crazy demo the last time I was there, where I did some sort of voice API stuff from a PowerShell script, and I initiated a phone call that I made it do it in Dutch. So I didn't know that it was correct necessarily, but everyone loved the fact that here's this kind of English-speaking person who's taking a little bit of effort to make the demo slightly more local.
And the other thing you probably experienced going to Holland, like pretty much everybody speaks English.
Of course, yes.
Because you're expert-driven, we get raised bilingual, so that helps to transact and to be in this world where English is sort of a primary language.
Yes.
So for us, that's beneficial, and that also makes us uniquely positioned, because the economy does well, lots of IT professionals, English-driven. So for us to have a company like a cybersecurity company makes a lot of sense, and serve both Holland as well as Western Europe or the greater areas.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I guess that it kind of brings me to my next question is, I mean, how have you guys seen the cyber landscape change over the last 2 years with everything kind of going on in Europe? Have you been able to see a unique change in sort of the threat landscape specifically with the work that you guys are doing?
That's actually a quite interesting question. Back in the years ago when the Ukrainian war started, we saw a drop in cybersecurity incidents.
Okay, wow.
That's actually quite interesting, because the attacker groups also saw that what the Russians were doing was not particularly a good idea. So they changed their focus.
Right.
And that's where we saw a small drop in the amount of incidents that got reported to us.
And has that continued, that trend, or has sort of it righted itself?
It actually restored back to normal.
Yeah,
so it was a temporary thing.
Yeah, folks had picked up on the fact that someone was distracted, so they were going to go, well, hang on, let's see if we can kind of step in the void there.
It also makes you wonder about the connection between nation states and financially driven threat groups, right?
Right.
Like there is this fine line, because some of them are loyal to a cause or to a nation state that serve, for instance, the Russian interests. And sometimes they outsource certain tasks, like some sort of intelligence agency might use a specific group. We will never know for sure, but there is some sort of interaction going on there. And but for the first time with Ukraine, we really got evidence altogether for the fact that cyber war, the fifth dimension of war, is now a thing. Like apart from land, sea, air, and space, we've got cyber. And for the Russians, and this is something that Microsoft published in blogs over the last 24 months, they saw that attacks were happening in conjunction with physical attacks. So if they wanted to impact the energy network over the winter for their cause, they would first try through a cyber attack with wiper malware and all sorts of stuff. If they were successful, well, they reached their goal. If not, then a rocket potentially would follow quite quickly. So having evidence in networks from a nation state attacking another nation state and thereby being at a cyber war is something that we've all speculated on, but now for the first time it's happening, much like other things that we're seeing with drones and things happening in that war. But still, if you look at, we are not under attack itself, like we support the Ukrainian cause. If you look at Holland and the countries around it, it's more the financially motivated groups that still impact a lot. And it's certainly not a nation state per se, although with the intellectual property like the chip maker, it is a proper threat that we need to combat. But financial groups are the most worry.
That's actually what I wanted to say as well. Besides from nation states, the financial motivated groups also became more professional. You now have ransomware as a service. People are paid to give away their credentials in exchange for money so that they can infiltrate certain companies. And I think a simple example is try to hook up a virtual machine on the internet, RDP open, and look at the event logs and how much time there was less room for error nowadays than there was a couple of years ago, I guess.
Well, and it's like a spiral, right? When you see that still a lot of companies pay ransom. And so it's for them worthwhile to do this, make the money, spend the money on new resources, new attacks. It's still a growing economy, and it's a bit of a weird word, economy in this context, but it essentially is a ransomware economy, and it's growing and growing. And it's a tough problem because once you do get ransomed and your systems are locked, and they're telling you if you pay us this amount of bitcoins, you'll get a decryptor, as opposed to the business case where I need to rebuild, be out of business for longer times. You see companies really making a deliberate choice from also financial perspective and continuity. I might start to engage with those folks. Hopefully, I'll get the decrypt, and then the money flows into those criminal groups, and it starts all over again.
Starts all over again. Yep. And they're obviously investing all of that stuff because, as you say, economy. I mean, it's becoming quite a well-known fact now that they're even outsourcing the stuff, right? So you have this sort of.
They almost run their operation like a company. They have a support desk. They have operations, everything.
Right, and they have sort of access brokers who are selling off just access to things for someone else to come and deliver some sort of payload or something like that.
You can negotiate a discount if you're willing to pay, but you don't have the total amount.
And it's like a supply chain. It's like a mesh graph. Many ransomware groups of certain types delivering certain services, like you said. The folks running the help desk and trying to collect your money and work with you on that point are not per se the ones writing the encryption or the toolkit, are not per se the ones that are providing you with initial access. They're all working in concert, if you will, to make this happen, which is worrisome because they have at this point seems more money and more people on the ball than we have as defenders. And so the balance is a bit off, and that's also something if you zoom out, like how are we going to tackle this for the long term? Because this is a game of many things involved, and how can you make this go away on the longer term?
And it sounds to me also like the barrier to entry is lower, right? Becoming lower and lower and lower, because now if you wanted to exploit an organization with ransomware, well, you could buy access, so you don't have to know how to gain initial access anymore. You could probably buy the ransomware that you're going to use, so you don't need to know how to actually code up or encrypt or any of that type of stuff, right? So if you're resourceful enough, or if you have some financial backing, you don't even really need to know the technical pieces of this anymore. But as defenders, obviously we need to understand what they're doing so that we can defend, and that there's no easy or shortcut way there for us, right?
But it's an interesting conversation because if you see, they often the saying is like, we need to defend 1,000 things, and if we just leave one hole, they'll get in, and they only need to do one thing right to get in.
They only need to get lucky once, right?
Yeah, but it's also the other way around.
Yeah.
if they pass one of our tripwires,
Yeah.
if we have one signal, so they need to do only one thing wrong as well, we will start to capture them. Only the amount of people they have, the time and energy they have to set up their operation, start this, seems to be more than many of the defenders have. Like ourselves, we don't have infinite people, infinite systems, so there is a bit of a disbalance on getting it right. But I do feel that if you get things in place, also for us, it's not unbalanced in a strategy perspective. Like we will find that one signal and get them. But certainly the other way around is also true. Skip something in your defenses, and that's going to be the way of entry.
Yeah, and what you see is that they are also leveraging AI at this moment. A thing that I read a couple of days ago on the news is about Worm GPT. We all know Chat GPT, which is our go-to website to help us with our daily tasks and things. The attackers got a Chat GPT-like website, especially for things that they want to do. So if you look at Chat GPT, it's quite ethical. If you ask questions that are not that good, it will respond to you. Well, I can answer that. It's not to my knowledge. Worm GPT actually don't have that barrier in it. So it will create phishing emails for the attackers. It will create the Python scripts that they require to get access to build a payload, etc. So it's also AI is a game changer on their side.
On both sides, right? It's powerful technology for us in the productivity space, but yes, it seems like it could be just as powerful in the wrong hands as well. So a question I think that something that I've always wondered is how difficult is attribution of these types of attacks or events or things? Are folks blatantly claiming responsibility for things, or is there more of a signature to certain types of attacks than other ones that sort of allows for attribution to a nation state or something like that? How is that? Is it an easy thing, or are we just looking at the signals, we're going, well, this looks very similar to something we had seen before, and that's kind of how we piece it together?
It's a tough problem because in a digital world, you could be anybody, and you could mimic whoever you want to be. And that's fundamentally the challenging part in attribution, is making sure that you're 100% right on attributing that to a certain group or certain nation state. And you need to zoom out. Probably you need to have multiple signals, a longer time, a context, some sort of more clear image of what's happening, because what we're seeing in our systems and from our SOC is relatively narrow, but let's say an intelligence service might see more, and a vendor like Microsoft might see even more because the breadth of the platform. So I think that the better you can zoom out, you'll probably get more signals and maybe piece the puzzle together. And that's why you see Microsoft and the big vendors being able to do threat intelligence and do attribution. Same goes with intelligence agencies. But once you go back to commercial companies, for us it's relatively hard to say, well, it has a Chinese keyboard and they typed certain commands, so now it's a China actor. Could as well be the Russians because they want to cover the tracks, or your local neighbor who is having fun with, like you said, some sort of toolkit he bought. So
attribution is one of the hardest things in cybersecurity.
A bit, And ultimately, as a private organization, there's really no motivation or reason for you to be able to do attribution correctly, or you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter to you. Your job or your, I guess, motivation is to stop what's happening, for your customers.
Well, I'm not sure if I agree, because we're also doing threat intel, maybe on a different level than a vendor like Microsoft or an intelligence service. But if we want to get this right, we need to work together and make sure that we combine our efforts to bring up our defenses. And for instance, we serve the healthcare sector in Holland. And you want to share information, you want to share like literal signals, like an indicator of compromise or something. But you also want to share modes of operation that you're seeing, so that somebody else can lay another piece of the puzzle in there, and together we start painting the pictures up. I'm a firm believer that even private companies like ourselves need to do threat intel to a certain degree, because then combining those will make us stronger. But we have no illusion that we'll do it on the level of these bigger vendors.
And even Microsoft has difficulty pinning attacks to certain nation states, for example. We're at Microsoft MVP Summit right now this week, and I already saw the slide of the 65 trillion signals a day. That's one of their marketing slogans they often use. And obviously they have a lot of intel, right, with Outlook.com, with Xbox Live, etc. So they got a lot of signals. And even you now see in the threat intelligence, they have those dev categorized attacks. You're familiar with the new nomenclature on the... No. So before they pinned attacks to certain elements of the periodic table, but they ran out of elements in the periodic table. So they now have a new classification system.
The weather system?
Yeah, they have like a weather pattern. So like, what's it called?
Storm, typhoon.
Yeah, storm, typhoon, hurricane, and then combined with a color or some kind of material. And if they cannot classify it, sorry, it's late today. I cannot give immediate examples of countries attached to certain weather patterns. But Israel is sandstorm, for example. So all the sandstorms come from Israel. That's what Microsoft classifies. And even then, they have the dev section. So if they're not sure, they put it in dev because they couldn't classify it. So even for a company like Microsoft, it's impossible to do it perfectly.
Right.
We had Volt Typhoon, if I remember correctly, as one of the actors, and I think it's rather important that we know who's knocking at our door, because also it gives us an idea of how much money they have and what's important to them. So we know, for example, that some state actors actually want to damage infrastructure maliciously, shut down water pumps and compromise infrastructure, and others are there for industrial espionage. So we also have nation-state groups that are masquerading, for example, as ransomware groups, but actually they are there to do as much damage as they can and leave the ransomware there with no intention actually of cashing out. So the point to understanding who your adversary is and who the bad actor is, I think goes a very long way in terms of who am I fighting. One of the things we had to, just to segue a little bit, is when we built the frameworks that we did, we researched the defensive doctrines of countries, but that also means that we have offensive doctrines of organizations and countries. So we know that if we pick on America, for example, because we're in America at the moment, America has a typical way of going to war. They also have a typical way of defending themselves. So with that taken into account, a country that wants to defend itself against America needs to do it in a certain way. And I think from a cybersecurity landscape point of view, we'd be amiss to ignore the intelligence of, if a Volt Typhoon group is coming after me, then we know that there's normally a password spray that then follows some kind of an indicator of compromise. And then we have a living off the land attack, because Volt Typhoon would take a very long time to reconnaissance, as opposed to other actors who, I mean, we know about the famous 8-second attacks, right? So we had a small compromise or something that was open for 8 seconds, and massive compromise as a result of that.
It all sounds very scary, though, right? When you start talking and you start digging into this stuff, we're not talking, a bunch of high school kids just messing with each other, right? We're talking, stuff that can actually, in the event of attacking critical infrastructure and stuff like that, do harm to people, right? Do harm to things.
If I may remind you, Lapsus was a bunch of high school kids doing a bunch of damage.
Of course, but it's not. This is not because of Mario Kart or something like that.
Sure.
This is the stakes are slightly higher here.
It can start that way, actually.
Right.
But often the attackers learn by playing games and they don't win, so they're going to DDoS their opponent,
right?
So they can win the game.
It's a crazy mindset when you start thinking or digging into it, right? But I guess the point I was trying to kind of get to was, this can be really scary, but there are things that we can do, right? There's practical things that we can do to help organizations kind of harden their defenses, if you will, right?
Is this the heartwarming part of the show?
Well, we hope so. Well, we got to get to some light at at the end of the tunnel, right?
Fear not, folks.
Fear not. We're not here to depress you.
Yes.
We're here to be real, but we also are here to offer advice, suggestions, and solutions.
Yes. Well,
right.
Not us, at least our guests.
Well, exactly. So, I guess the question that I have then is one of the things I've seen is we're seeing some of our frameworks and things like that actually start changing in the way that we look after our infrastructure and the things that are important, right? And a good example is I deal with something called Essential 8 quite a lot, being in Australia. Essential 8 is part of Essential 8 now it mandates backing up of data. And that may seem like, yeah, well, why aren't you backing up your data? Well, hey, I'll remind folks, especially if you come out of the exchange world, like I do, there was a very long time where we didn't care about backups for Exchange because the technology was so good in terms of replication and high availability that it wasn't really needed, right? But now we're coming back to the point where we're going, well, we're not backing it up because Johnny might accidentally delete an email or because the server's going to go down. We're backing it up because now we have to defend against something like ransomware, right? And we need to be able to try and recover that data.
Last line of defense.
Right. Now, the question that I was eventually getting to here was, what sort of practical guidance do you guys talk to your customers about? Basic things, right? Because I think very often doing the basic things and doing them well gets you further ahead than not doing anything at all.
And that is very true. And the thing, though, with the word basic, it seems easy.
Right.
But it is not easy. And if it was easy, everybody had that done already at this point. But we still have lots of things to do around identities. Lots of things, like you said, around immutable backups. Not just a backup, but something that's immutable, so that the ransomware gang doesn't attack your backup as well.
Right.
But those things, like getting up-to-date software and whatnot, those are things we all probably, and also your listeners for this show, understand that they need to do, and they are considered the basics, but they are not easy. And so if you talk about practical things, like we often say, get the basics done, and we'll support you, we'll help you, but get those done, and they will help you going forward. But I'm more a strategic guy, so what I try and do and tell my customers, well, like, zoom out, have a plan. Whatever the plan is, we can discuss and maybe understand if it's good or bad plan. But many don't have a plan, and that's even more worrying to me. Like, once you get a plan, you'll start budgeting it, planning for it, hiring for it, whatever the plan is. So I often say, like, the practical approach is, like, get a plan. Do you have a plan? If not, make that plan. And then certainly the basics should be in the plan. Should probably be your first priority.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? You talked about identity. It's astounding to me when I hear figures from Microsoft that there are still 70% of folks that are not using MFA in the service. Like it's heartbreaking actually, right? Because it means that all of the work we're doing to try and educate people and all of the things that we're telling our customers, a lot of that stuff still isn't actually it's not taking hold.
Sure. And if you look at, like, Microsoft publishes this digital defense report every year, and the one for 2023 came out in October, so about half a year ago. And if you look at some of those statistics, then where those attacks start at those companies are, of course, through the fact that there are unmanaged machines, that there are that there is software that's from a lower patch level. So this is something that will actually make you safe really every other day as well. So it's not about, I will be hit by this new 0 day that we all read about yesterday. That is probably something that could be an edge case or certain companies that are a high target. Many others will just have a VM on the internet with an open RDP or an unmanaged machine in a network or some sort of supplier that has an identity unsecured. Those are the things that are common attack starting vectors for every company.
And maybe a funny and maybe also a little bit of a terrifying example of that is recently it became a little bit of a meme, but it was actually a serious job offer from the German railroad company.
Yes.
They were asking for a administrator with knowledge of Windows 3.11. And everybody was forwarding that over Twitter, and it became one of a meme. But apparently a very critical system in somewhere in a railroad system was developed for that system and couldn't be updated, and they needed somebody with knowledge. And
Wow.
That's, you could say update your system, but it's just that
Yeah.
too easy to just only say
And
that.
that's the thing, right? These systems are interconnected, they're interweaved, they have dependencies. It will be hard to do a quick replacement, certainly in an OT environment.
Yeah.
On the other hand, that's why we should plan for it. This should be a continuous effort. Patch management should be a process of high priority, something you do. But certainly we all recognize that priority shift. On the other hand, because cybersecurity is spiraling and attacks are spiraling out of control, luckily we do see budgets going up. We do see boards concerned about this. And over in Europe, the EC, the Commission, adopted a new law that will go into effect latest October 17 this year, but countries have different dates when they implement. It's called the NIS2 standard, and it mandates that countries classify their companies as critical, important, or general companies. Once you're critical, you mean something to the country we can't live without, and same with important companies. And they have specific things they need to do by October 17. And that pushes something now higher up the agenda. Also because the board member responsible for IT is now personally liable if an attack happens. And so we do see, certainly also this year already, a big undertaking where companies are investing more and getting more done. But then you have the talent shortage. And so even though there will be a mandate, there will be more money freed up, then now we don't have enough time or people to get this done. So there still will be a gap between reality and the things we want to have happen.
Yeah, that's interesting, that whole sort of responsibility and ownership of things, right? We see that in Australia as well. The government's pushing very, very hard to make people personally liable for these types of things. We've had some very large, big in the media sort of breaches in the last year or so, which have not gone down very well. And I think generally the public is becoming a little bit more aware of this stuff as well. Which obviously hurts your share price or whatever, right? When you have an issue like this, it's no longer something you can just push away or hide or razzle dazzle away. Like it's something that the media gets hold of it. It hurts the company as well. So,
but not permanently anymore, Chris.
No, definitely, yeah.
Because the share price drops and it recovers, and with the amount of breaches that we have, it's like, oh, so and so got breached. Okay.
But the other fact I saw is that customers are more willing to change brands once they understand that a certain brand has been breached. Because do you feel safe there? Do you think your data is still secure there?
Fair.
So we see quite a bit of impact from not just the infrastructure, not just the share price, but also customers looking differently at your brand.
Privacy is getting more important.
And if I've bought something from an online shop that has been hacked, I might be more willing to go to the competitor and say, I'll buy from them.
Exactly. I don't want to leave my name, phone number, credit card number, etc. over there.
Do you find though? I agree. To me, the thought of my private data floating around is super scary, right? I'm sure it's all out there by now. Anyway, I lived in America for a long time, and all of the American stuff is everywhere. So, but do you find though that people take their privacy as serious today as they did? I feel personally that maybe the younger generation don't care as much about privacy.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the other way around, because I've got kids.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing, Dad, don't post my picture. And then also I see this random name. I say, is this your profile? Yeah, I'm not going to use my real name. And so you do see them teaching each other hey, I'm aware.
Right.
While if I would ask my father, is fully on the internet, everything he does, sharing it out there. And so what we see with our kids is they do peer education, where they say oh, if you create a TikTok profile, whatever, let's not use your old name. Or if they're filming each other, they're aware of no faces, or they put an emoticon over it. So to me and my kids in Holland, I do see that the new generation is picking up on it.
Super interesting, because I would have been willing to bet money it was the opposite way around, right? I don't have any kids myself, but certainly my interaction with young folks has been, they don't mind. They're happy to do the trade-off for free services for their data, right? Because that old adage is if you don't pay for a service, then they're getting
you
their
are the
value.
service.
Exactly.
They're also actually getting taught on school about their privacy and
Interesting.
leaving pictures and things on the internet.
Ah,
Might be a European thing though that
Yeah.
that would
I do
invest.
think it's a European thing, yes.
yes. But
Yes.
that's fascinating though that at least in some parts of the world that is being addressed, right?
And you see the same thing now with
Yeah.
the big tech, where a European Commission is trying to force them to do certain things, where the big companies need to adhere to new privacy rules. I think Europe in general, from our geography, has been very big on make sure we get privacy right, and that the younger gen is now educated on this.
Yeah, I mean, you guys gave us GDPR. You
Yes.
guys gave us cookie wall click-throughs.
Not sure if we're proud of this one.
No, don't mention that one.
That's a big mistake, the cookie wall. I think everyone directly clicks on exap.
I'm
Yes.
pretty sure. I don't think anyone reads that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe NIS2 is also inspiring other countries and parts of the world to
I
do the
hope
same
so.
thing.
Well, and we're all like we're one now big digital interconnected world. We need to, like, even if we don't do it today, we'll need it tomorrow, because impacting one end will impact the other end, and even the smallest of services unavailability nowadays starts to impact how you can live as a person in this world. So getting our companies secure, getting our citizens secure is a high priority.
Look, yeah, but I honestly, I'm inspired by that because, like I said, I would have been willing to bet that, you know, like certainly in our part of the world, it's not something that kids are taking seriously. And I'm hopeful that if it's being done somewhere, that, you know, we could all learn from each other, and hopefully those policies will flow to where we are as well, right? So we don't have to worry about the youth of today as much as we already do, right? Because it's a bit of a different world for them, I think, compared to
And
us.
luckily, Microsoft obviously is helping us with all the products they make.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of Microsoft and speaking of you guys being a Microsoft partner, I think there's some congratulations in order, I think, today. So what were we
That's
talking about? It's the Managed Service Provider Partner of the Year finalists for you guys?
Yeah, we are so proud of that.
Yes.
You have no idea. I think this morning we were standing in a line to go to one of their sessions, and
Yeah.
we didn't read our mail this morning.
Yeah.
We woke up, we go to the Starbucks,
Yeah.
got breakfast over there, directly go to the session, and some of the other security partners came to us. Congratulations, congratulations! We are what?
Yeah.
And we are the a finalist for the MSSP Partner of the Year.
Yeah, congrats. That's
Well
a big
done.
deal.
Well
Yeah.
done.
So there was an immediate group hug in the middle of the line.
Yeah,
all of a sudden.
it's-
Right.
Yeah.
Did you get a drone picture of that as
No,
not yet?
No,
I cannot fly my drone indoors. And also, I had a little bit of a conversation with some security guys on campus earlier. So I'm a bit hesitant to fly the drone again on Microsoft campus, to be honest. But
All right.
nevertheless,
That might happen.
Well, look, that again, I think that's fantastic. Congratulations, and you know, thank you for joining us for the show.
Thank you for having
very,
us.
Yeah, very informative, right? And it's always nice to have that different perspective on things. Look, before we let you go, we know it's kind of getting a little late here, but what would you guys like to plug? Would you if you want to be found on social media, how do we find you? Any cool stuff? I know, Koos, I know you're always doing cool things, cool tools and things like that you're building for the community. What can we plug for you? What do you want to let the audience know about?
well, I made it a little bit of my personal specialty to build some stuff around Microsoft Sentinel. So I publish some blogs about solutions I make for and with our customers, and also for Wattel, of course. I actually have a short link, a Microsoft short link. So if you go to aka.ms/Koos, you'll
Wonderful.
land right on my blog.
actually.
Yeah.
That's
We're
like
so jealous.
I am super.
I want
super,
that too.
Yeah, well, I can't tell you help me because otherwise I need to kill you, I guess.
Yes.
That's the saying, right? So, no, some nice Microsoft guy
That's
helped
awesome.
me out. So, yeah, so you can find my blogs there. And I also like to be a little bit quite technical. So
Yeah.
my blogs come with GitHub repositories with source code, so you can try that yourself. But that's mostly on the log ingestion challenges and some specialties over there. Yeah, and obviously as Wattel, we provide a service to make it easier for customers who might have E5 and all the Defender products, but just are too small to handle all the incidents coming at them once they enable them. And that's where I think we can come in and put our eyes on their screens and monitor the incidents and take action.
Perfectly said.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, so that's what we do.
Anything else, Jeroen and Maarten? Anything that you guys wanted to?
Yeah, of course. I also run a YouTube channel. Every 2 weeks I try to upload a security Microsoft related video. I think this morning a video about Defender for Endpoint hits online. So you can find me on Azure Vlog. The YouTube channel is called.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll make sure to put some notes in the show notes for that, with some links there, so we can.
Yeah, and Koos did already the plug for Wortel. So
I'm sorry, I took that away from you.
Only thing
no,
I
it's
heard was
okay.
AKA.
It's okay. You're also Wortel.
AK.ms/Koos, right?
You
That's the
had
most
me at
important
AK.
thing.
You had me at AK.
No, I think I want to close off by saying, like, I want to plug the community, like you guys are doing with this podcast. Awesome job. And I think Australia is also a really tight community. And we're very proud that last year, Experts Live Australia came online.
Yes.
And so I would say everybody who loves the community and wants to go beyond what they see today, try and figure out this year if you can visit Experts Live Australia.
Yeah. And I can second that. I was a speaker at Experts Live Australia. It was a fantastic conference, and we're definitely looking forward and hopeful for this year's one. So very cool.
Well done to you,
All
Chris.
right. Very cool. Well, thank you again, guys. Really appreciate it. And I've, we took up your living space. We even had a studio audience of sorts. It's been great fun. Really enjoyed spending the evening with you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate the
Thanks for having
hospitality.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you.